we've had a pretty thorough discussion on Porter's 5 forces and how the ideas for that were developed. And now I want to talk to you about the other payoff from the analysis that Porter did, and that was the idea of the value chain. And this is a straight replacement for SWOT. There are 3 things that we need to understand. One is 3 words, really: value system, value chain, and activities. Now, the value chain that Porter is referring to is all of the transactions that take place from the mine to the pantry of the ultimate buyer of the product. And in any kind of a manufacturing process or even a service process, there are multiple transactions that take place from the origin to the final definition or final ending of the product in the hands of the consumer. So each of those is part of the links, is one of the links in a value system. The second idea is the value chain. And on the value system, Porter says that every company can stake out a section within that value chain, value system rather, that would represent all the activities that they do. And this might be a fairly large part of the overall system, or it might be just a small part of it, but we're going to look at that in specific. Finally, there is the activities that are involved in this. And activities are something that Porter defines as anything that either accumulates cost or that has the opportunity for reducing cost. So let's take a look at that from with those definitions in mind. And the first thing is the value system. And here, since it does tie in with a chain from the mine to the pantry, this is multiple systems for multiple different product types of industries. But we're only going to be concerned with the one that we're in. So within that, we come from our value chain, which is this one in the middle, from the mine or from whatever the point of original development of the raw materials for our product, all the way up here to the pantry. And we position ourselves by observation. We're able to determine where we are on the value chain. And this is the segment right here in the middle. And that represents the transactions that take place within our company. Now, our objective is to create a product offering at or below the customer's willingness to pay. And this is known as the WTP, and that's how we'll refer to it here in the future. And we have to develop our product with a total cost that is the sum of all the costs incurred in each transaction along the value system. And that number has to be less, that ultimate cost number has to be less than the customer's willingness to pay. Of course, we intuitively do this as we're looking at launching a new product or a new company. We kind of go out and do a survey with customers and find out what they'd be willing to pay if we could deliver a certain kind of product. So we've got a basis for going into the process here. And Porter uses something that I suspect you seen several times during your college career. Not always using it as Porter intended, but nonetheless is a very common way to approach or lay out the nature of the company. You notice that there's an upper section that's a light green, and those are called support activities. And there, if I were a government worker, I would call these, let's see, they would be called staff positions. And they apply all the way across the company. So for example, human resource management is used as a function for inbound logistics, which you see in the bottom half of the chart, all the way through to marketing and sales. It's the same human resource management department that's involved there. The lower half, which is where the inbound logistics and the marketing and sales are located, It's called primary he calls them primary activities. But again, if I were in the government, I would say that those are line functions. Those are the people that do things, that make the product, that handle all of the things going on with the product itself, between the original receipt of raw materials on through to sales and marketing, delivery of the product, and then ultimately after sales service. And that's something I never really looked at as an important feature, but it obviously is important, particularly as so much more of our economy is tied to information technology in all aspects, whether it be farming or medicine or just in regular business. But you can see that this kind of describes, the lower half describes the relationship that we have. Inbound logistics operation, which is inbound logistics, is the purchase of raw materials, the storage of those raw materials until they're put into process. The operation department is converting or fabricating those parts into a usable product. Outbound logistics is taking the finished product off of the last machining step and putting it into the warehouse, and then ultimately putting it onto a truck or a train and shipping it. Marketing and sales, of course, is actively involved in all of this because nothing happens until somebody sells something. And finally, service is after service. Now, if we look at all the costs that are accumulated in that support activities area, plus all of the costs that are incurred for our particular value chain in the area of primary activities, we'll end up with the point of the arrow. And you notice that there's a thing called margin. And that's the difference between what all of our costs are and with the customer's maximum willingness to pay. We want to make that margin, that green section, as large as possible. And if there is no margin at the end, we either got to go back and figure out how, as not only as a firm, but also as an industry, you have to figure out how we can get the cost down to where it would be beneficial to the customer. Now, at each transaction between one link and another in the value system, a potential for profit exists, and negotiation determines who's going to get that profit. So let's take a look at this. Here is a set of links on the chain, and there is profit potential in each link. And you can see this, you can visually experience by taking your thumb and forefinger of your left hand and looping over it the thumb and forefinger of your right hand, so that you make two circles. And as those are interlocking, there is space between each of those links. And that represents a potential for profit. We want to get this down to where all of that is taken out, with profit either going to the seller or to the buyer, the next step up in the chain. Now, this transaction opportunity takes place at each transaction level, all the way along the value chain. And each time the buyer at that next level, moving toward the finished product, has got to negotiate and get the biggest share of that potential profit as he can. And that's our whole objective here, is to maximize our profit opportunity. So in many companies, the number of transactions may run as high as 70. This is true of the auto industry, where they may be assembling the final product in the United States, but they buy components and ship parts up to Canada, where they're fabricated further and then sold back to the American company, and with Mexico as well. So in each case, there is a transaction cost associated with that. And what we want to do is to look at how we can eliminate costs and or increase profitability in our section of the value system, the portion where our value chain exists. or find ways to negotiate with the people both upstream and downstream to try and get a larger share of the part of the profits that they've been able to extract from other links along the chain. But at the end of the day, all of the costs must be absorbed someplace. And we have to make sure that there is some left over for the people on that value chain, or else they won't work. So going back here to the same place that we were, this is that arrow showing the staff and line activities and the effective margin. And recognize that this is just our segment of the value system. And it's just a few links on the value chain. We'll make that large as possible, as I said, because that's what we are going to try and charge the customer. And it's worthwhile to go in and find out what he's willing to pay before you go to all the effort of trying to put together the product that you want to make available to. So a cost analysis of activities will point out areas where costs could be reduced. Now, how finite this analysis is will be determined by the amount of potential cost reduction you think is possible for your firm. So, for example, you might change a manufacturing process. Perhaps you would outsource some of your manufacturing to someone else, where they would do 3 or 4 steps of the manufacturing process, and then sell the product back to you, where you would take it having gotten a lower total cost by virtue of using that outsourcing vendor, and would be able to buy down our costs. Now, the WTP can be increased where value can be added while performing an activity. So it isn't just a matter of cutting costs. It also is a matter of finding areas where you can provide additional value in your existing system. They'll make it more beneficial to the customer. For example, you could put a handle on a consumer package to make it easier to carry. I notice when I buy shredded cheese at Costco, you have to buy 2 bags, but they have it taped together in a way that's easier for you to carry it as you're going out of the store. And because they want to sell you the 2 for the price of 2 and not sell you singles, this is a nice little convenience that encourages you to buy the 2. It may also allow them to buy down the cost a little bit and charge you a little bit more for that convenience. SWA is Southwest Airlines, and they can increase value, increase price with more frequent flights to regular destinations, offering more convenience to the customer, and therefore they can charge a little bit more for that convenience. And here's the third one. Packaging laundry detergent in pods that are easy to just throw into the washer, and it makes it easier to use rather than having to pour either powder or liquid into your washer. So they can charge more for that per wash than they would be able to do had they tried to sell you the bulk packages, where you'd have to do a lot of quick conversion to figure out how much powder you would have to save over the 15 or 20 pound package to make it preferable to using the pods. So it can go that way both ways, that you can reduce costs, and if you are able to create value, you can increase costs and pass that on to the consumer whose willingness to pay is higher. So our analysis also can reveal where we can position our company on the, we can position our company's value chain on the value system to capture a larger share of the value system's total margin. So how can this be done? Well, we can do an expansion downstream. If you remember back with Porter, he said that one of the things that you have is the opportunity for new entrants. So you could expand downstream, moving into becoming a new entrant in the channel of distribution, to move by beginning to retail your own manufactured products. This is what Apple chose to do, and they've been remarkably successful. They previously had gone all through distributors. You can expand upstream, moving back towards providing raw materials. And while they probably are doing it today because they don't seem to print any newspapers anymore, LA Times owned a major position in a newsprint mill in Snowflake, Arizona. And this would allow them to buy down the cost of that major component they had in their finished product, the cost of newsprint material. Another one that has done that has been Campbell's Soup, and they buy a lot of tin cans for their soup. In fact, excuse me, in fact, they have required so many that they found it was more effective for them to put up their own canning lines to manufacture the tin cans, and in fact sell some on the outside. And I believe they're the largest consumer of tin cans in the United States. So recognize that their large companies have hundreds of transaction points, and they may not be working on minimizing those. They should be, those costs. But you can take advantage of their lack of understanding by doing a more thorough analysis on your end. Now let's take a look at a specific company. Here's how Southwest chooses quick turnaround to add value and reduce costs. And this is a list that it's only a partial list. We could find a lot of other things as well. But they get their gates in second-tier airports, reducing gate rental fees. This is a major component for any airline, is how much it costs to have that piece of property where they can park their plane. More frequent flights. The more frequent flights you can have, the lower cost per available passenger mile. And in their program, they not only have lower cost per available passenger mile, but they have a program where they reduce their turnaround time to 15 minutes, whereas every other airline has turnaround times in a neighborhood of 45 minutes to an hour. And this gives them a half-hour extra flight time for every flight that they fly versus their competition. And that's part of low cost per available passenger mile, because they've got more available seats with more frequent flights. They offer one class of service, which means no assigned seating, and also it means lower cost of loading people on the plane. They do direct ticketing through an SWA kiosk, or you can call Southwest. Excuse me again. They can do that. You can do it through calling directly to Southwest, but they will not pay anything to agents, to ticket agents like Orbitz or Travelocity or Kayak or any of the other ones that are out there, or to private travel agents, because that costs $8 to $10 a ticket. Southwest can do it more cheaply. They don't interact with other airlines, which means they don't have the problem of dealing with what Orbitz will deal with, where they may have 2 or 3 different airlines involved in a single single passenger ticket. They don't have to worry about that. They don't do interline transfer either. And what interline transfer is if you're going from, say, Los Angeles to Phoenix on American, and then you're transferring to a Southwest flight that goes to Kansas City, they have to transfer the bags for the American flight to the Southwest flight if they were dealing with someone like Delta. So that is, American would be transferring onto Delta. But Southwest has no program like that. And so therefore it requires you as a flyer to go down to the carousel, pick up your bag and take it out to the plane. Now, this saves money for Southwest because they don't have to pay this interline transfer fee, because every time somebody from one airline handles something for somebody else in another airline, there is money that changes hands. And in exchange for you're having the inconvenience of having to pick up your bag, if that happens to be the way you were flying, they'll allow you to take 2 bags on for free. Nobody else can match that because they have these interline transfers. And they also honor tickets from Orbitz and Travelocity. So they have a double penalty. They have to pay for the transfer of the bags and for the extra cost of paying the travel agent. They have no meals or any other amenities because their flights are short. It's not practical to serve any food on those short flights. And so they turn around and make that a feature, that they move it faster because they don't have to handle meals. They offer one type of plane, that's a 737. And this means lower maintenance cost, a smaller aircraft with shorter mileage parameters. And of course, that's what they're flying, is primarily 500 miles or less on a flight. Flexible crews, because every pilot and every service attendant knows exactly what to do because it's the same on every plane. The result is that they end up with a tailored value chain. And this is one of the high value aspects of using Porter's analysis of the value chain. So I'm going to leave that with you as my thought on that, and we'll go to something else the next time.